start to
All set.
record.
Recording. I'll leave you in charge, Bill.
Great, Mary. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. I guess I've met a couple of you, but I'm Sarah Colgan, not Michael Saltzman. I'm using my husband's computer.
And Sarah is our new building commissioner. And I had an opportunity to meet with her on Tuesday for a couple of hours. It was very informative. As I said in a meeting a couple of nights ago, I came out more confused than when I went in, but that's kind of a general theme for me right now. So let's call the meeting to order. I think it was, I don't see anybody from the public, so I'll assume there's no public comments. Then what I want to do is, next up is table of content review, but I want to jump, because obviously Sarah is here. She has a time restraint on Thursday nights. So she offered to join us tonight, and I told her that I'd move her up on the agenda so she could still fulfill that commitment that she has. And I just wanted her to introduce herself and kind of give us a little overview of what she's found the few weeks that she's been here. She's very interested in being an active member of this group and contributing however she can. So Sarah, why don't you give us a couple of minutes?
Okay. Tonight I'm available until 6:45.
Okay.
But normally I need to leave earlier than that. Bill had talked about maybe moving the meeting time a little earlier. I don't know how the rest of you guys feel about that, but I really do want to be able to be a full participant in this, because I'm the one who has to enforce this, and it needs to make sense, and I need to be able to explain it to people so it makes sense to them. And I'm really specifically talking about the zoning bylaws. I understand this committee is meant to redo the general bylaws and the zoning bylaws. And I was hoping maybe we could reduce the scope at the moment, maybe tackle zoning first or something like that. So we're not biting off more than we can chew. And maybe we'll actually have something ready for the meeting in a year and a half.
Okay.
What any thoughts about doing zoning versus general first? Or I know we're gonna talk about it obviously in a little bit, but I guess we can just do it now too. Any preferences?
Well,
No,
I would probably do the general ones first, but
I have no problem either way. I think tonight, weren't we going to sort of work on the table of contents? And, once we do that, then we can pick and choose what we want to focus on. And
Right. No, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about the table of contents. Does anybody have any questions for Sarah about anything? I will tell you that we covered a wide range of topics. One of the things that, again, isn't our problem yet, but one of the things that she specifically talked about is how of a poor condition our maps are in. They're an absolute mess, and she's already come across some situations where, things aren't where they're supposed to be on some of the zoning maps, and people have, built buildings on other people's property because one map said one thing and one map said another thing. So that was a rabbit hole that I went down that I wasn't expecting to. But
Yeah, I wasn't actually saying people built stuff on other people's property, but it shows up in the GIS as on their neighbor's property because the maps are just that bad. So we really need to redo the base maps, and then we can put all kinds of layers of information on it. The MVP meeting that we had this morning talking about emergency preparedness, it'd be great to have a whole lot more data on those maps, but we need it to be put onto something that's not junk. So we need to find funding for that. And I emailed the people from Pear Corporation, which are running the program, to see if they had any suggestions for more sources of funding to help with our map problems.
So who does that? Who is the one who physically would redo the map?
Well, the assessors got some pricing to redo the maps. I don't know if it's solid pricing or ballpark, but I don't have those numbers exactly, but I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 100,000, not like 10,000 and not like 300,000, but I don't know more specifically than that,
Mhm.
what it would cost to redo the base map. But we really need to then we're building on something that's actually good. We don't even have a zoning layer for the map. We just have this awful PDF. And I can't tell what zoning district lots of properties are in. And then we
It's
have
caused lots of problems.
Yeah, and we have the W district problem, which doesn't make a lot of sense, and the map for it is abysmal. And if I'm having to enforce saying, no, this is in the W district, but I'm not really sure, that just makes the town look foolish. It ties people's hands. So I just want to be able to be working from good data. And the sooner we can do that, the better I can do my job, and the better a whole lot of other people can do their jobs too, because it doesn't just affect me. We're talking about just getting DPW's information on there with water lines and sewer lines and things like that. They just have paper maps still. There's nothing digitized over there from what I've been told. And that would be great for everyone to be able to see that.
Yeah, in the past, so we've had a planner on board over the last 20, 30 years, who would actually do that. And that I don't think we've had anybody in 5 or 10 years, right?
2008.
10 years.
Yeah. So again, it's really money to hire. You hire a planner who can either digitize existing maps, do upgrades to CAD drawings. So
I don't know if we need a planner to do that, or if there are other entities we can just
Yeah.
hire to do
I
those
would
tasks.
imagine that we have to get a bid for it. I mean, there's probably several companies that are capable of doing this.
Yeah.
We have to identify those companies and we
Yeah.
have
RRG
some cost.
contracts with people to work on the GIS. So it might be something that RRG ends up doing for us to get the base map fixed.
Right.
But then all the extra data we want to add on to it. I already emailed MRPC and got their zoning information in a GIS kind of format because they're the ones who produce the PDF that I have to work with. And I sent it to the assessor who sent it on, but I can't see the data because it's in a format I can't. So I don't know if I got what I asked for. But I'm trying to put something together so there's something that's at least a little useful. Though I know our PDF zoning map is not reliable either. But what do we have to work with?
Well, Roger Hoyt from Planning had sent the select board an email. I want to say it was yesterday, may have been today, about applying for a DLTA grant that had something to do with mapping. So at a Board of Selectmen meeting this afternoon, we voted to send a letter back to Roger authorizing him to make that application. Again, I don't know exactly what that is or what it'll do if we get that grant, but certainly we are now talking about it and trying to figure out, at least start the process. We also talked a bit today about a planner and how we may be able to make that work next fiscal year or so. I think they've clearly been identified as significant problems that we need to deal with them sooner as opposed to later.
who did you talk about, Bill? Who was that? The last thing?
We were talking about the prospects of getting a planner into the budget for
Oh,
next
okay.
fiscal year. And, one of the suggestions that was made was maybe we could either regionalize that or share services with another community. So Brian's got a couple different groups that he participates in. So he's going to start reaching out to people and see if there's any interest in doing that. Truth be told, we need a full-time planner, but if we could get one half-time, that would be an improvement for us. that we would work our way into it. Some other things that were discussed were, looking for some grant funding, much like the fire department does. Then they'll get a grant from the feds that says, okay, you hire a new firefighter, the feds will pay all of it the first year, and then they'll pay 75% of it the second year, 50% of it the third year, and 25% they click it down until finally you own the whole thing. Gives you a chance to build into it. So there may be some opportunities on the funding side to do that, but we are trying to address that situation as well.
With regard to the DLT, we talked about it at planning last night, so he must have sent you the note today.
Yes. Yep.
It was about maps, but it's sounding from what Sarah's saying, what we're asking for might not be the right thing. We were asking, basically, our sewer system is not properly mapped in this town. And specifically, we were talking about the need to map that wasn't something that a DLT grant might be able to help us with. However, it sounds like, we might want to redirect that. And we can do it because, it was just something we talked about last night and you talked about today. So if we want to sort of fine tune that with Roger, I'm happy to sort of reach out to him and, talk to him about how specifically he wants to apply for this. And maybe we should make it more about getting our base maps better, if that's possible to get a grant for that.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that, Walt? I think I'm in favor of doing what's the next best thing for us. And, if Sarah's saying that's what we should be doing, and seems like some other folks agree, then I can be flexible enough to move in that direction without any difficulty.
I can reach out to RRG and get a clearer picture of what it would take and what the procedures would be to get the base maps better.
Sarah, who and what is RRG?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you didn't realize. RRG is the company that does this assessing for the town. So they're our subcontractor who provides the assessing.
Yeah, I know we have one, didn't know what their name was.
Yeah, okay. Regional Resource Group, and they go by RRG. Harald Scheid, it's pronounced Harald, it's German, is the owner of the company. And or president, whatever, he had looked into the maps and what it would take, but I don't know how valid that information is. I got this stuff secondhand. My husband works for that company. So I have an in there talking to those people. But I'll find out a clearer story of what it would take and what the costs are likely to be, what the procedures would be. But I think that's kind of our first stop to find out how to fix the base maps. They have 32 towns that they do the assessing for. And he told my husband that Ashburnham has the worst maps of the 32 towns. So that gives you some perspective.
They do the assessor's maps?
Yeah, the GIS map.
Yeah.
They're the ones who send the map updates out. They're the ones who kind of manage the GIS in terms of updating the maps. I don't fully understand how the layers get created and added, but we need the base thing to be good before we go creating all the layers that we don't have. I just came from working in Sterling and we had wonderful maps. They had redone them all about 10 to 15 years ago. And so they were remarkably accurate. And they had layers showing all kinds of information.
There's someone in
and I
Sterling-
was just really shocked at how little we had here.
Is there somebody in Sterling that went through that process that might be a good resource for how did they change their maps? Who did it for them?
They didn't have a town planner at the time. They only got one a year and a half ago. And so I'm not exactly sure how that process went down, other than RRG probably being the lead on that. So I'm going to reach out to them and find out more, and I can report back next week.
Okay, excellent. Then let's jump over to the table of content review that we had talked about. And I know Marshall sent a late document. I don't know if everybody saw that or not, but
Marshall, as usual, you're ahead of us all.
so what, was anybody able to take a look at that and have any thoughts about how we should proceed with the table?
It's the Word document, Marshall.
It is a Word document,
Okay,
so
yeah, so,
you can play with it as much as you want.
Yeah.
I basically took the town of Norwell's kind of formatting approach and divided into, general zoning, and then there were subcategories within that. And I took our myriad list of bylaws and just kind of stuck them in what I thought were the appropriate subcategories, whether it's health and public safety or land use and natural resources, streets and ways, and so forth and so on. I mean, there's only a few that I couldn't quite determine where to put, like unregistered motor vehicles and trailer regulations. Who knows? Although I guess they go into rules and regulations. Payment agreements for overdue taxes, where the hell does that go? Anyway, it just seemed logical to take a bunch of these things and consolidate them under a single heading, like finance, capital budgeting advisory committee, Department of revolving funds. They all have to do with financing, municipal finances. So why are they scattered to the four winds? Let's maybe think about consolidating them. I did that with town employees, personnel, paid vacations, licenses and permits. We don't have bylaws having to do with peddling and soliciting self-service gas stations, but we do have junk and secondhand dealers and revocation or suspension of local licenses. But, I just put the categories in there to see if, maybe we should think about having bylaws relative to peddling and soliciting and gas stations. But we talked about including a town charter and Norwell. I mean, that was their very first thing. So I threw that in there. You can take a look at it, see what you think. But, it's a start.
I thought it was a great first start.
Yeah, no, much appreciated, because when it came over, I looked at it, I said, oh, damn, he's ahead of me, and I'm okay with that. So I appreciate you putting the effort into that. Anybody else was able to invest any time in looking at that or have any suggestions or thoughts?
I did not. I have one question just to back up. This is something you were going to hire the services for expressive print, right? Isn't that part of that?
Well,
Some of this. I know we needed our input, but then Lorraine was going to take it. Is that going on? Did that happen?
Well, we're going to talk about that under outside resources.
Okay, I'll leave that
which is
alone.
coming
Okay,
up.
so my answer to you, I just looked at this for the first time. And it is what we talked about, division 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's great. To the detail that Marshall's brought it, I did not look at it.
Okay.
Yeah, and my understanding is after it's doing what Marshall did is what we have to do first. And then when we have that, and we have a very clear pathway, that's when we can start involving Lorraine.
Right, okay.
Take our bylaws, don't change a word of them. Just take our bylaws and put them in this category, and then we can talk about how we label them or whatever, because we have to have always cross-referencing labels and stuff like that, so that we can't actually change the labels. We can add to them, I suppose. But
Yeah, I found out, and I can't remember where I found out, but you can't change a period, a comma. You can't do any of that stuff unless it goes, maybe it was Sarah that told me yesterday that unless it goes to town meeting, gets approved there, and then goes off to the Attorney General's office. So it's a very strict process, much different than what I would have anticipated.
I have one other sidebar selection, though, when we were talking about creating one document and how we were saying, okay, we want to put our charter in this document. on the Acton website, they had a whole section on how to that I thought was pretty interesting. So I could see something at the end of this, at this end of this book where it's a how to do it. And it was like how to get a dog license, how to get a building,
Oh.
how to do all of that kind of stuff. And and they put it all in one place. So it would be, maybe it's a separate it certainly is a separate part of this document, if not that, but it may be something that could be Division 10, or whatever,
Well,
how
I
to,
don't-
because too many people ask us, how do I do this? Or how do I do that?
Are you trying to say that should be incorporated into the bylaws?
No, not into the bylaws.
Oh, good. Okay.
Not into the bylaws. We're trying to find one place where people can be directed to know. That's why, a lot of people didn't even know we had a town charter. So we put the town charter up there like Norwell did, and that sort of says, okay, town charter, this is the top of the pyramid. This is what drives us. And then here are all the bylaws that we do. And then here's how to get things done, boom, boom, boom. That's how that it may or may not be appropriate. It's just an idea to throw out there for us to think about.
Oh, we have a permitting guide as such as it is, which could be expanded, to include things like that.
Yeah, the permitting guide might be the more proper way to label it, and say it, but.
And we could change the name of permitting to, I don't know, licensing, whatever we wanted to.
Permitting, licensing, whatever.
To make it a more all-encompassing kind of how-to document.
I think that if I go back in my memory banks, I also think that was one of the tasks that we gave the website review committee.
Yeah, those are very website appropriate.
There is a tab in there now, how do, in the way it's formatted, you can't even see the rest of it, but I think we're all kind of talking about the same thing. The question is, where do we put that? And we could put that together in a document, incorporate it in a website or something like that. But I think right now, anyway, it's outside the scope of what we're trying to do as it relates to the bylaws.
Maybe in terms of organization,
Yeah, no, I think it's a valid thought process, and it's clearly something that needs to be enhanced, because it's a lot of it is little simple questions like that, or and we did get that building or the permit guideline thing done, and I was not overly impressed with the end results of that document either. That was I think that was a grant that we got to do that, and it seemed like it took forever. And when we finally pushed the previous town administrator, all of a sudden it miraculously showed up, and I think they rushed to get it completed. So
yeah. While Sarah's still here, I'd love to ask, I know you said in your response to Bill that you are looking forward, that you have some things, you've come across some things, and you'll organize that and you'll present it to us in terms of, issues that you've noticed with the bylaws. But is there anything big that has jumped out of you and at you in your first few weeks working here?
Well, the lack of a zoning map that I can use effectively is huge. But then when actually looking at the bylaws, I have a few lists here. There were a couple of issues that Rick Travers actually wrote a letter about in 2018, which included the language about swimming pool fences contradicts the building code. So just refer people to the building code requirements. So there's some simple fixes like that. And there are also, I think this one, he was also wanting to have the W district. Yes, he wanted to delete the W district because it's a bit redundant. It was created, it seems, it was created prior to the Conservation Commission really having a role. And it was trying to limit development close to water, and the Conservation Commission has much better mechanisms to deal with that. So the W district is just another headache that we don't really need and confuses people. So if that were just eliminated, that would simplify some things and it wouldn't make us any worse off in terms of allowing development where we wouldn't want it.
Yeah, that was instigated by me.
I knew that was one of your.
And you know, years ago, it caused a major problem with a particular development, residential site development. And anyway, I've written, I can, whatever I copied Rick on, you know, I can send you to you again, but, you know, and I've talked with Karen at MRPC about it. Who I think Roger tells me is in agreement that it needs to go. It's archaic, doesn't belong here anymore.
Marshall, if I could ask you a question, have you, I've tried to do some research to find out where that bylaw came from. I mean, as we all know, it's not easy to get a bylaw passed. So somebody at some time got together and put a lot of effort into drawing up that bylaw, went to a town meeting.
That's
and,
correct.
You know, you've been on bylaw committees. I've been on several of them. And then you have to try to sell it to the townspeople.
Right.
Tell them why it's a good idea, convince them to vote in favor of it. And then the attorney general has to approve it.
Yep.
Before we go deleting anything, I would like to see if I could get my hands on the documentation that was behind the initiation and the approval of that bylaw. But for the life of me, I can't find it anywhere. I think that the next step that I have to take, if I really want to find that documentation, would be to go to the library, go back 25 years to the town report and see if I could find it in there.
I did that.
It's got to be somewhere. The attorney general approved it. So I would think.
I will send you the documentation that I have, but including my review of the town reports from 1965 to the present. And there's reference in there to, you know, a warrant or something that was sent out townwide. Can I find it? No.
I can't either. It's bizarre to me that it doesn't seem to exist somewhere. It has to exist somewhere.
Well, it has to exist. I mean, is it in, you know, the safe in town hall? Maybe, but I can't find it anywhere. Anyway, I will send you everything that I have. It is in the early 70s. As Sarah's probably seen, there is a 1970, whatever, quote, zoning map, which identifies the W district, and it's based on mean sea level elevations, which are different depending on what pond or stream you're talking about. And you know, the zoning map that also Sarah is referring to, you know, it was prepared by MRPC. They looked at the W district on the real map that said elevation 1075, and they kind of, you know, sketched that in, which is, you know, it's not accurate. It's a misrepresentation. And of course, everybody believes it.
And the MRPC map has a disclaimer on it saying you can't scale off of it.
Well, yeah, well,
what do we use?
Tell the abutter who's dead set against the residential development that it's a representation. Tell their attorney, tell the two engineers that they've hired to conflict with me and the Conservation Commission, as I've done, you know, which I don't have a problem with, but, you know, and it's hard to tell you, I'm sorry, you're wrong.
I'm glad to hear you dug into what we had for, you know, what did the town actually vote on? Because I actually was talking to the town clerk about this last week or the week before, saying I want to dig into when all the zoning was adopted. Did they just adopt a picture or did they adopt descriptions? I've got a description of the green business district. I got a description that they found last year for the business district. So that could be plotted out properly, but the other districts, I want to know what the town actually voted in so we know what's a valid map.
I'll copy you as well on what I send to Dave. And, you know, I mentioned it to Michelle the town clerk at one point, and it's like, she kind of threw up her hands and said, I don't have time for that kind of stuff. And I seriously doubted whether she would leave me alone in front of the safe while I went through every document. But I've been in the library, and I can't, the upstairs,
Do you think the
temperature
Attorney
controlled
General?
room, and I can't find it there. And of course, now trying to enter the library and get access to that stuff is almost impossible.
Marshall, do
So,
you think the Attorney General's office would have any documentation on that? Or would-
let me give Maura a call, okay?
I'll tell you how I even found out about it. Back when Mike Gallant was the building inspector and the zoning enforcement officer,
Yep,
when he would deny somebody a building permit application and
Yeah.
send it to the zoning board,
yep,
he wouldn't tell us why he denied it. He usually, well, since Mike, all the zoning enforcement officers have said per section
yeah,
3.22.
yeah.
Mike would not do that. I cussed him out at the time for doing that. But what the end result was, he forced myself and everybody else on the zoning board to scrutinize the zoning bylaws to find out why he said, no, you can't do this. And that was how I even discovered the watershed protection district, because I said,
Okay.
well, this is a zone A. The
Yeah.
setbacks are all correct. They're not too close to the lot lines. The square footage is right. Why did Mike say
Yeah.
no?
Yeah.
I'd call him up and ask him, why did you say no? And he'd chuckle. I mean, so like I say, at the time I was kind of cussing him out under my breath, but the end result was he forced me to read the zoning book over and over and over again from page 1 to the end to discover these things. So actually he did force me into a situation where there was quite a learning process that I went through, but that's how I even found out about it, was because Mike had denied somebody something because they were within the watershed protection
Well,
district.
yeah, and there's square footages that you can account for and not account for in terms of the building area, blah, blah, blah.
I
And
just denied Bob Francis, based on lack of frontage and W district
lack
there's
of
a lot.
frontage, road frontage?
road frontage. And he's got 2 reasons why he needs a variance to build on this lot that he wants to build on.
Yeah,
One of them is W district because it has less than 20,000 square feet outside of the W district. That's one of the things that's in here. So you can't count the area that's in the W district if you don't have more than 20,000 square feet. It's just complicated. And fortunately, I'm kind of used to reading this weird stuff and understanding it, but the average person coming in is not going to have a clue how to handle this.
I mean, is that,
I'm all for simple.
is that something you can get an exception for, a variance?
I assume you can get a variance because that's when, but you need a good argument. And he doesn't have a good argument. It's just, the lot's not the right shape and it's not in the right place. I don't think he could.
As
I don't
I'm
think
sure
the ZBA
Sarah
really-
knows, the difference between a variance and a special permit and a variance are worlds apart. A variance, to get a variance granted, there's a set of criteria that's written
Shape,
by,
soil,
it's a
and
state law that's written by the Commonwealth that you have to follow through. And that's, you're right, Sarah, to get a variance, you've got to prove 4 very specific things. For a special permit, all you have to do is say it doesn't degrade from the intent of the bylaw, nor is it harmful to the neighborhood. But a variance is a whole different animal. There's got to be a hardship. It can't be created by the applicant. It can't degrade from the intent of the bylaw. I'm not looking at it right now, but there's.
Yeah, I think it was created by the applicant because he changed the lots around. But I don't know that he ever had enough frontage there. Anyway, he wants to do, you guys, I know this is off topic, but I think at least Bill should know about this because he wants to do some horse trading with the town, combine some lots. It's still gonna not have the right frontage, but trade a boat launch. for the
Yeah,
townspeople. So
he
you
forwarded
should
that
just
to
be
me
aware
too.
this is it's not gonna go away yet.
No, no, I wrote him back an email saying, that's nice, but, we can't make our decisions based on what we might get in return. We have to deal with the regulations. Oh, dopey me, but that's just the way it goes.
I actually think this isn't really all that off topic because it's exactly what we're trying to fix in our bylaws. And
Yeah, it is. It is.
real life situations really help me understand how we have to try to change some of these bylaws, or at least work toward bring up these issues to the select board as we go on to the next phase of this and try to correct these. We have another real life situation that crosses the whole map problem, which is up there at 119 and Ashby Road, where he wants to put a three-room motel, which is
Ludicrous.
apartment building. I think I read your determination letter, Sarah, and I agree with your concerns. And I told him so. I told his engineer last night in the planning board meeting that I have concerns, and I don't think that that's a motel. I don't know of a three-room motel in the state of Massachusetts.
I actually grilled him about that. I said, how's the cash flow work? How is this a motel? And he said, well, weekly motel rates are $400 something a week. And so if you're renting out even two of them, then you're pulling in over $3,000 a month. And so the math isn't that bad. That was his response to me when
but I still think it's an apartment building. I still think it's not a motel and we know what happens with these things. When they fail, they turn into apartment buildings.
This is what brings me
in a business district. But that it also crosses that real live, example also crosses the other thing you brought up, the fact that the zoning map that lays over there, we spent 15 minutes last night talking about where the green business line and nobody agrees on it. Nobody can figure it out.
Yeah, well, that was what they found in the library archives. Rick Travers said he found a map that had actual dimensions on it. So that was supplied to Graz Engineering, and Graz Engineering then fixed the A&R, and it went from there. This is the history that I got. I actually called up Graz to get clarification of where they got their data from. And it was the same thing that Rick had told me about. So at least it all made sense.
And we have an abutter up there who went out there and took those same measurements and measured them themselves and got something different than what Graz said. So this is the kind of activity that's going on because we have nothing that we can call definitive.
Yeah. Well, I have to trust the people with the stamp that they know what they're doing. I mean, legally, I have to accept their stuff.
Yeah.
Unless I have some really egregious concerns, I suppose.
Unless it disagrees with the maps that you have, but you can't trust the maps that you have.
I can't trust the maps that I have. So this actually brings me to the very next thing on my list. I was starting to go through my little list of issues. We need a definition of a hotel and a motel. If we don't have a definition, shame on us. I did hours of research on this, and there are places that have definitions that limit time frame. We have a limit in overnight cabins, but we can't use that for a motel. And I looked up Mass General laws to find any sort of definition of a motel. None of it was helpful. And in fact, some of it was hurtful to the town. If you're hurtful to the position of trying to stop this project, because the town can adopt excise tax on the room, but the state says if someone rents the room for, I think, more than 90 days, then the town can't collect the excise tax. So by inference, we can't. The state is saying it can absolutely be a motel room that you can rent for more than 90 days consecutively. So, and we have no definition to limit it, and there's nothing helpful in the state to limit it. So we're stuck. It's just, it's shame on us for not having defined it before. I think we're stuck with this project. I can push back saying make it look like a motel, but that wouldn't win in court. I'm just,
I mean, I think you can do what one of your predecessors did. This is just a suggestion, and say, this looks like an apartment building, not a motel to me. You have to go to zoning and planning to get, a ruling on it. Send it to us, and we'll review it, vote on it, but I can tell you, you can tell what my vote's probably going to be, but we need to, I mean, when we don't you're right, we don't have a definition, but when we don't have a definition, you can look at it the other way. The planning will make up, we'll look at it and say what we think it is. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking out loud now, because this is not what we're going to have. We already had abutters or people who live in that area at the meeting last night, asking questions, and I know they're going to voice concerns and fight this themselves, because we know what this really is about, and it's
I think
not.
we're limited. And in fact, if he built, I have to go unfortunately, but if he built a commercial building and put 3 apartments on top of it, it would be allowed anyway. So is this, as we were talking about I was talking about with Bill the other night, is this the hill to die on? It's not opening the floodgates because the business district is the size of a postage stamp. There's not much available property where you could possibly do this again.
Well, and that also pointed out the other problem with, why the other 2 houses are up there that he's putting up there right now in the green business zone. And it's all because of one clause that's in our green business bylaws that I think was a mistake. You read the reason for the green business bylaw, and then you go through everything, and then all of a sudden you can put a residential piece on there, and it makes no sense at all to me. And I mean, I would be one who would vote to say that clause needs to be eliminated, and we wouldn't have had this issue with him up there had that clause been eliminated. But, and I haven't found, one single green business bylaw in another town that looks anything like ours. Most green business bylaws are about, solar energy and other kinds of things that you can require of the property. This one is completely different, and it makes no sense at all. And essentially, he's made the green business district a residential area because he's put 2 houses on it.
But it's allowed.
Yeah.
So that
It is allowed.
we can talk about.
That's the mistake in the bylaw, and we had to allow it. We couldn't stop it. I'm not saying we could. This, though, this business section there, I would debate it.
I don't think we can really fight it. We can just say, make it actually look like believably look like a motel. But there are some criteria that are like there'll probably be only one service. It won't be split service, so they wouldn't be able to pay for their own utilities. And they have to keep a registration of guests there, and the Board of Health has to inspect it. There has to be a license. There's all kinds of criteria that would make it different from an apartment building, but architecturally, it wouldn't be all that different.
If they don't follow those rules, can you order them to cease and desist?
They would be in violation of zoning, and I guess I could find them.
Yeah. Find them, or just, because if this turned into an apartment, it can't turn in, it's in a business district, it can't turn into an apartment building. That's all I'm asking.
It cannot turn into an apartment building unless he raises it up and puts a commercial building underneath it.
Sarah, have you
Sarah,
been
I know you got to run, so
Go ahead. Thank you.
thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, that was good discussion. Hadn't planned on it, but it's all good. I think it's all pertinent, so to what we're trying to do. So what do we want to do with this table of content review? Do we want to give everybody another week to look at it and see if they what they think of Marshall's ideas or come up with some of our own.
Yeah,
I, yeah, Marshall, I just read through it, this Glenn Hathaway. So I had for my first time. So just two quick questions that will help. Based on last week's meeting, we talked about, combining all these things into one document. So I understand Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, zoning law, general, and regs. Division 4 and 5, did you add those two divisions based on a review of other towns? I'm just curious how that,
Division 4 was in the Norwell
okay,
bylaw, which was kind of bizarre to me. I mean, I did it just because it was in the air, but I mean, rules and regulations are not bylaws. So enforcement, could have been Division 4 because we do have a bylaw called enforcement of the bylaws. So that one, as you see in the yellow underneath, enforcement was chapter 24
right.
of our bylaws. But I'm, at least as a starting point, I did include the rules and regulations, but you're right. I mean, to me, they don't really belong. Unfortunately, it is a bylaw. Chapter 20 is a bylaw that says rules and regulations for municipal sewer collection.
Right.
So what are you going to do with it?
Well, again, I'm just trying to get over just real quick. So if we have another week to review, the reason to add 4 and 5 was based on you like that format. You saw it in another town. Sounds like that's the answer. You saw it. So I'm good with that. And then Division 5 enforcement. I like seeing enforcement in any document sort of separate because everybody's how is this being enforced? I think that's important for all of us. So I don't mind those things. I just seen why we did. I was expecting Division 1, 2, 3, leave everything alone, just put the charter in there one. But so if that's how you got there, again, this is our personal opinion. We're going to vote on it at the end of this. But I don't mind this. I was just trying to find out where it came from. So
and again, I'm this is the only. Yeah, I mean, it's the only rule and regulation that's a bylaw.
Right.
It's just one having to do with municipal sewer collection.
Yeah.
So if we could throw it someplace else, which instead of under rules and regulations, but it begs the question of, okay, what do you do all the other rules and regulations?
Because So my
bylaws.
Yeah. So my remark, Bill, is this: I like what Marshall put together. I like the two added divisions. Again, we get a week. I didn't drill down. I didn't know we were going to drill down this far. Marshall, thank you. This is great. But I was thinking just overall, I really went and looked at the two table of contents, general bylaws and bylaws. I picked out 6 things and six line items or chapters that were relative to like Board of Health, my background here.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through just to see if there was something immediate. Oh, wow, this is really bad. And Bill, you're right. We talked about this last week. We can't change anything, but is there something that's outstanding? So so that's what I did last week. So I didn't find anything that was screaming at me. I know Dave mentioned last week there were some things he wanted to chase after, but I don't want to start another conversation yet. So I'm good with this format. And I agree, another week might be better to get down to this level that Marshall's brought it down. It's nice, he's sort of formatted. It'd be nice to go through and read through and see if we do agree with that. So that's my comment. I'm good with what he has, and another week I think is needed, to sort of get down to that detail.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
I want to.
I agree with what Glenn said. I think that another week to review what Marshall had put together would be wonderful because I haven't really had a chance to look at it yet.
You only had 10 minutes. I mean, come on.
I like what you did. I like what Marshall did, and I like what Norwell did. The only thing is I thought it was odd that they just said Division 3 zoning bylaws, and they had none of the breakout underneath it. And so what I'd be willing to do is to take, between now and next week, I'll take Marshall's document and I'll expand Division 3 with with what our bylaws say and try to get that, because that way, because when zoning bylaws, once you get to zoning bylaws, it's how do you find what you need to
Right.
look up in the
Well-
zoning bylaws?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the way the outline was. But I agree. I mean, and I didn't have time to do it, what you're suggesting, Walt, and under zoning bylaw, you plug in on all our zoning bylaws.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then,
remember as we relate back to Norwell, that's a guide. We
Yeah.
can change it and do
Sure.
whatever we think is most appropriate for what we want here, but it's a good jumping off point for us.
well, that's all it's intended to be.
And then, I mean, once we kind of get it in that format, then we can go through and make,
Yeah.
reorganize the ways that make most sense for us. I do like the idea of the rules and regulations, somehow being able to make that go in there. We can't change them yet, but we can get them
No.
kind of organized yet, and then we can start highlighting the places where we think change or review or something needs to be looked into further. Because, and like we've said before, I'm sure there's many parts of our bylaws that we're just going to say are perfectly fine as they are.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we can change the title to, bylaw rules and regulations or whatever. We can make it work.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so in the interest of time, then I'll put table content review and discussion back on for next week as the primary thing. I just want to talk briefly. I had outside resource down there. So at the selectmen's meeting this afternoon, we spent a fair amount of time talking about the proposal that Lorraine gave us. So I have to be careful how I say this because I'm being recorded, but the general feeling is that the Board of Selectmen is in favor of us getting somebody from the outside and engage them to help us with this process. One of the words that Lorraine used in there was a retainer. And as a municipality, you're not allowed to do that. So again, we're crossing over from one fiscal year into another fiscal year. There's, some regulations and things like that we have to deal with. So we're still trying to sort through exactly how we can do this so that it touches all the legal bases that it needs to touch. So I can't really give you any more than that, other than the board's in favor of it. We just have to sort it. We can't take that proposal C that Lorraine gave us and said, okay, we're going to go with this. We've got to move it around a little bit and get it sorted out. So there will be some discussions between myself and the town administrator and with Lorraine and in town council and stuff like that to get it sorted out so that we can move forward with what our intention is. So the intention's good, just got to sort out the details.
Okay.
Any new business that anybody wants to bring up about anything?
I'm just curious to whether any other departments responded. You had that first response. Do we have anything else for feedback?
I have not heard a word. I expressed my frustrations pretty loudly today with the town administrator. Particularly with the people that are on the payroll. I said, look, all I'm asking is that if you got nothing, give me the courtesy of sending me an email back saying we don't have anything for you at this
Right.
time. At least let me know you're alive.
Yeah.
So I'm going to continue that. I'm going to wait another week and then I'm going to follow it up and we'll see what we get the second time around. I was very encouraged from my conversations with Sarah. Again, an active, willing participant. She's got obviously some things that she'd like to see happen. I looked at her book. She's got notes all over the place. So I think, again, she'll be a good asset for us as we move forward. So that was a good thing.
I agree. I'm impressed.
I think again.
I don't agree with her on the motel up there.
No, I had the same discussion with her yesterday at some length, and I'm not quite sure what I'm talking about, but I said, look, if it walks like a duck, sounds like a duck, it's a duck. this is not a motel. You can call it whatever you want. This is not it. So we'll see how that thing sorts itself out. But he clearly seemed to be much more engaged than our previous building commissioner was. And I think that's a good thing.
And most importantly, I think, it doesn't appear that she's afraid to confront issues and do enforcement that so often has been neglected.
Yeah, we talked at some length about enforcement yesterday. And again, I was encouraged by her response to some of the things some of the situations that I had thrown out there. And I think looks like it's a good hire. And I think that's going to move us forward. So that's all good.
I would add that we have to be a little bit careful, and that's why I made the comment about, what are other services that provide these map services and stuff like that, because her husband does work for the company that is our assessor. We don't want any conflict of interest allegation when you're going out for services like that. It's going to have to be bid. We're going to have to get competitive bidding, and an RFP is going to have to be written and all of that. But I'm perfectly fine with her doing the initial sort of analysis and study and get kind of order of magnitude costs and understanding of what you have to go through. But we have to keep in mind she is married to someone who works for the firm that does our assessing in our town.
Yeah, and she was certainly quick to disclose that to me. I kind of think I knew that, but it just didn't jump out. But so that's all good. But when we get to that aspect of it, Brian is the chief procurement officer, so he's the one that would handle all the RFPs or RFQs or however we do it. So, but that's a very valid point. We have to stay away from any potential conflict. Let's jump on to approval of minutes. And I know Marshall had sent us out. The only thing I see that he highlighted was what time we adjourned, which I believe was 7:15 last week. So would somebody be interested in giving me a motion to approve the minutes as written with the one change of the adjournment time of 7:15?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Glenn Hathaway, second.
Okay, good. And any questions on the minutes, comments, changes? All right, hearing none, I'll call for a vote then. Bill Johnson, yes?
Dave
Glenn Hathaway,
Perry, yes.
Marshall Dennis, yes.
Walt Meisner, yes.
Okay, I guess we got everybody. That's great. And one other thing that is, I guess it's public information, but I'm going to say it anyway. It'll be official on Monday night's meeting. Steve Nims has tendered his resignation. He's going to be retiring on April 9th. So that obviously is going to start a series of other things happening as it relates to the town. So I just thought I'd put that out there for people and let them know that again, something else is changing. So, all right, somebody want to give me a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right, moved and seconded by Bill Johnson. All those in favor, Bill Johnson, yes.
Marshall
Glenn
Dennis,
Hathaway, yes.
Walt
Dave
Meisner,
Perry, yes.
you got them
I
all.
got Walt. Okay, that's unanimous. All right, folks, thanks. We kept it at an hour like we talked about. As I get more information, I'll push it out to you, and we'll see you next Thursday at 6.
Okay,
Hey, thanks very much, guys.
do.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, folks. Have a good night.
Yep, you too. Thanks.